Hey, Revenue Radio. I'm Mary Grothy, and Lauren Hawthorne is back because she's the Based on podcast. So welcome back.
I am so happy you invited me back. That's a good sign that you trust me to be here.
It's a very good sign.
Yes.
Yeah. You'll notice there are a few people that only did one episode, and I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh. Keep my mouth shut.
Yeah. You're going to see a lot of familiar faces as we continue in this season of Revenue Radio. We've been recently on a theme all about our revenue engine. We have used so many fun acronyms like growth as a service, being the gas, right, and the revenue engine. And, there's different, I guess, acronyms and terms that we've been using to be a little bit playful as we describe how all these components work together. So let's continue on that theme today. I mean, the real gas going into the engine for everything, aligning branding, marketing, sales, customer success is this thing called revenue operations. Let me give my definition that we've used for the last, since 2019. And then I want your feedback on this because you've evolved from sales into marketing and having to take over what it looks like to have pure automation and no walls and barriers between. But we define RevOps as the operational workflow and processes through all revenue departments and the supporting technology that aligns them. So if you can visualize with me that we have operational processes, and that is different, right, with your different team members. So you have people working in branding and marketing, people working in sales, people working in CS, but it's not linear because marketing also should support the other half of the bow tie funnel, so into customer success. But then you have the tech stack underneath. And ideally, you have like a HubSpot or something where everybody can coexist, but that is not what we usually see. We see an ad hoc of just a bunch of different technologies. So that's what we define RevOps as, is the process as well as the technology for all the different people. What have you experienced in your career so far?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of in the last year been a little bit of a new term for me, but what I'm seeing now slowly is that RevOps is actually becoming like an actual department,
yes.
like customer service or like sales or like marketing. And it's a whole process management, and it deserves its own attention. So, even 5 years ago, I've been in both the sales side and the marketing side, and it was really difficult. And you had to have a lot of proactive processes in place to get them together, marketing and sales and customer service as well. It was like, okay, I have my own system over here. Sales has their own CRM. They have Salesforce. I have Pardot or Zoho or whatever it is. And then we get in a room together and, kind of point fingers at like, and try to claim credit of like, no, I'm actually spending a lot of money to get you these leads. And sales department's like, well, actually I have my own system for my leads. And it's like marketing spending the most money. You want to be tied to revenue and you want to be tied to those closed deals. And it's difficult to compare data in a room like that. And so now it's like you can have all systems into one. And I highly encourage that to happen because management can now go in and say, okay, all the dashboards are the same and everything's tied in together. And marketing passed on these MQLs that became SQLs, and they are actually doing something instead of just spending a ton of money.
Well, it's exactly right. So we first started doing RevOps at the end of 2019. It was a brand new term for everybody. And we had just become a HubSpot partner. One of our clients who was a property management SaaS technology, which went on to be acquired by JLL Technologies, they were on Drift, HubSpot, Salesforce. They had SDR outbound. They had a lead acquisition tool where they were paying for leads to come through, like intent leads back then that were very expensive. But there were so many different technologies and systems. And then we did a pop-up sales team for them, which we would define as 4 or more people starting on the same day. We did pop-up SDR team and inside sales team. And we did all of this and we went to build all of it, but it was really the first time that we took on a RevOps project. And we had just hired a fractional CMO who just like changed everything for us in our company history. Her name was Rachel. She's incredible. And she was a HubSpot genius. And we had just signed on as a HubSpot partner. So we weren't even sure what this thing could do. And she came on and she schooled all of us. And she did a workshop and showed me for the very first time what a revenue engine map. So actually mapping out every single workflow process. And holy smokes, I looked at it and I said, we've been approaching this wrong for so long. We've been making the work harder than it needs to be. We've been building in inefficiencies and waste for years, and not just us, right? But like how many other revenue leaders? So she shows us what this can do. And we saw the map, a tech stack map of what they had, and then what it could be, that future state. And we were all like jaws to the ground, like, this is RevOps. The opportunities were endless. And so we all, I mean, it was a learning curve.
Yeah.
We all had to learn that technology inside and out. And then all of a sudden we became trained and certified on 14 other revenue technologies to be able to build these unbelievable engines. Thankfully, HubSpot has advanced significantly. So a lot of those technologies that we were partnering with outside of the system, we don't need to anymore because they're continuing to advance and add functionality inside of it. But that was the wake-up call for me, was like, oh my gosh, how these engines have been built with so many silos. Okay, I have to say one more thing.
Yeah, please.
As a CRO, my favorite part of changing the way that executive leadership understands revenue is by building a CRO dashboard that shows revenue across the entire organization in one visual snapshot, from highest level brand awareness, traffic to the website, how social channels are performing, all the way through the funnel, and then through the second half of the funnel, and showing adoption, retention, expansion, advocacy, the whole kit and caboodle on one snapshot. And it is mind blowing every time we present this. And executives are like, I've never seen a complete understanding and snapshot of all of our revenue.
Yes, exactly. And I'm taking a CMO school at Pavilion right now. And our discussion just a couple of days ago was as marketers, it's a challenge, or it has been a challenge in the past, to tie ourselves directly to that revenue, and how much of that allocated to revenue and all of our efforts. And the entire hour and a half discussion with the class was like, okay, this is extremely important to tie yourselves into the data all the way to the end, nurturing existing clients all the way back to getting a new lead. It's like we're involved in that whole system. And a lot of times CEOs didn't know that, or CROs didn't know that. And we were fighting to justify our own jobs. And so with platforms like HubSpot, it's so much easier.
Yeah, agreed. Like RevOps is something that's evolving. Like you said, in some companies, it's becoming its own department. And rightfully so. I also just screenshotted and sent Sabrina, our CMO at House of Revenue. She's like my right hand we work on a company together, but I screenshotted her a comment that Warren Zenna had put out. He's super popular in our revenue community on LinkedIn. And it was actually in reply to someone else's post, but in the comments, he put, the head of RevOps is like the chief of staff to the chief revenue officer. And when I sent that to her, because I know she and I both are data nerds when it comes to all things revenue, and I know we've revitalized some revenue engines, ours included, that everything is tied to revenue. Some of it is just influence, and some of it is measured more from a higher level brand awareness that you want to see, like over time, did certain things uptick? You know, you don't see dollar for dollar, like this did this, right? Not like a paid media campaign or a specific campaign. But she's a nerd for the data. I'm a nerd for the data. Everything that we have built with this company since she started here has been data driven, and it has been tied into HubSpot or other technologies, and the analytics, and everything that we can do, we can trace it back. And I feel like we've been able to run super lean as a company with our marketing budget is so small, but it produces. And so when I saw, like, to the CRO, the chief of staff, that right hand is going to be, well, we would argue it would be the CMO. But in this post, it was all about this head of RevOps. And I couldn't agree more.
Wow.
They show us every detail of what we need to see in order to make decisions driving on revenue.
Especially when you aren't a multi-billion-dollar company and you're a startup, or you're trying to scale, and every dollar matters. You know, I worked with a client recently that was spending, I think I said this before, like thousands of dollars a month on paid Google ads, and didn't know like what of those leads were converting, or what that was even doing for their company. And yeah, I mean, I like to think of it as two categories. Like marketing is, general brand awareness. There are things like when you put up a billboard, you don't always know exactly who's coming from that. But also, hold your team accountable for these KPIs and this data, and say like, okay, what of that $20,000 is that getting us? And are you just throwing money at something? And we don't have to live like that anymore. It's really fun.
Well, it is great that we don't have to live like that anymore. It really is, because also like we're in a tight economy right now. People are losing their jobs. Like it is, companies are holding on to dollars. They're cutting fat. They're holding on to cash. And it's a really interesting time. And I know a lot of us are navigating it right now. I've seen a lot of marketing roles get cut and recruiter roles get cut. And I hate to see it. I hate to see it because I am so passionate about a marketer's role and their value to the organization. But I think, to your point, a lot of that challenge is that there is no visibility to leadership of the value that they are driving. And I think that by bringing in the RevOps components where we're able to track and have revenue attribution reporting and to show how the campaigns are working together. One of my favorite things too is like when you look at real revenue attribution reporting, or you look at an influence during a buyer's journey of what influenced the revenue. I mean, you can have 18 different interactions with sales and marketing. So how do you pinpoint and be like, oh, you know, what dollar does this tie to? Sometimes you have to look at it more of a holistic view, but you could tie like this campaign led to the first interaction. This campaign led to the conversion to this stage of the funnel. This interaction led to, you know, whatever it is. Finally, having that visibility, I think, is critical. Marketers can prove their worth now. They have the tools to be able to do it. I think that for years, like I look at marketing like human resources. They are very hard to quantify. I used to sell payroll, so I like love HR people, and I always vouched for them in their roles because people would look at HR people as an insurance policy just for compliance and reducing risk. But a lot of HR people just couldn't quantify wanting to do culture things for the organization or increase employee engagement or, you know, whatever. And they were struggling. So I know a lot of tools and technologies developed inside of HR to say, hey, here's how you can quantify this now. Well, the same thing has happened for marketing. So I just think like you're learning in CMO school, marketers need to take control of that and start proving it out.
Yeah. And maybe that's my sales background. Like always tie yourself to the numbers, like U equal revenue is like my philosophy. And so bringing that into every job that I could have in the future is like, okay, I'm less at risk if I can prove myself. Right. And I always tell young marketers that as well. And, you know, it's in like a place like HubSpot is great to put all of your information because I mean, it's not just marketing. It's not just sales. It's like customer success. I can go in and see a customer and see every single email that they've been sent by our teams. I can see every campaign they've opened. I can see how many times they've looked at the website, and that's no longer, you know, separated. So
yeah,
it's an exciting time.
It is. It is really nice. So I think where we're headed in 2023 with revenue operations, I think in 2019, people were like, what is that? And you could ask 1,000 people and 1,000 different answers would come out. In 2020, people started to see it in action, but I think they were still on the fence. 2021, it really got adopted. You started to see actual RevOps titles and positions come to the market. You saw people like HubSpot bring in tracks at inbound, you know, for revenue operations, which was so cool to see. And then in 2022, it just started to become a staple. I mean, you saw so many people posting that you can't even have a revenue department without RevOps. But then I feel like in 2023, we are realizing even more value because now we need to be able to bring in efficiency, remove waste. We need to have the best well-oiled machines as possible. We need to have visibility into data. I always say opinions are valuable, but data is priceless. Opinions are still valuable, but the data that a true RevOps professional can help create and build into the visibility so everybody can see. I just feel like it's not going to steer us wrong in 2023. Like, I don't know how a marketer can perform without RevOps. I don't know how a sales team can perform without RevOps. I don't know how a CRO can report up to leadership even for their own job and show how the engine is performing and where they're bringing in efficiency without revenue operations. And for goodness sakes, for the client experience, put your service team in the same technology that your sales and marketing team are in, like for the good of the customer. I mean, it is fragmented if support is working out of something different. And now you look at a HubSpot, you look at some of these other tools, like you can have integrated customer service support inside of the CRM, and then everybody sees the same thing, and all the walls are broken down, and the history is there, and conversations are so much richer, and then the client has such a better experience. And if I know one thing right now, you want to hold on to your clients.
Yes. Coming into 2023 is a really good time, first quarter, to evaluate that tech stack and see if it's intelligent. Because like you said, like customer experience is number one. That's what we're trying to. And so, an example is I worked with a client recently who had completely, separate customer service and sales departments. They had a salesperson having 3 to 4 hours of conversation with this new client, signing them on, leaving, and then the customer service, side takes over. And now that client has to have another 3 to 4 hour conversation about the exact same thing they talked about with the salesperson. And there's just no streamline. And so we're working to kind of work that out. And like you said, put yourself in the shoes of your client and see, is this an optimal experience? Where are the friction points that we can massage out?
Yeah. Hey, I completely agree. It is definitely the year to be retaining customers and also having efficiency inside of the revenue engine and being able, I know companies are looking to cut costs right now. Wouldn't it be great to just find it internally inside of your processes, find it inside of your tech stack, find it inside of the people that you have? What if you could optimize their role? What if you could adjust the job description or look at the process flow, where people are spending time, and optimize that? Can you get more out of your current staff without asking them to just work more hours or take on more load, but actually bring in efficiency so that the productivity is higher? Now is the time to leverage your RevOps team or to leverage someone who understands revenue operations to be able to bring this forth. All right, as we wrap here, are there any last words of wisdom that you'd like to share on this topic?
Something that, I try and do every year is take some time, speak to your customers, like we were just talking about. Not just what are your employees doing? What are you doing? What do you think is good for your business? Actually talk to them for 20 minutes. Get 5 customers on the phone, whatever you need to do for 20 minutes. Ask, what are your goals for the year? What are you trying to accomplish? How do we fit into that? And then that gives you a very eye-opening, a lot of times, view, especially, 2023, we're heading into a difficult year, I'm assuming. So, it's just a great way to get started.
Yeah. The customer is going to tell you what you need to know, whether you agree with it or not, because you got to use a filter, and you also need to look at the answers, and you need to look at patterns and trends in the data. If you have one customer that says something, but you interview 4 others and it didn't come up anywhere else, and you validate it, maybe that wasn't as pressing of an issue and it was one off. But if you're hearing recurring themes, what more information do you need? Also, it is just such a great exercise to be reminded of your true value that you bring forth, because sometimes the value that you have in your value proposition that your marketing and sales teams use, customer might actually have a different perceived value of your product and service. And if you can hone in on that, understand that, optimize around that, I think that you're going to have hopefully a little less challenge or fewer woes in 2023, getting centered on those items. All right. Well, that's it for today. Hopefully it was a little bit more perspective for you on the value of revenue operations and how you can leverage RevOps as gas in your engine. And we also like to say the glue that holds everything together. So many different ways to talk about it. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today.
That was so fun. Thanks for having me.